Welcome to part 2 of the Getting Started with vRealise Operations mini-series. In this episode, I'll take you through basic policy creation. We create and apply policies to ensure that the information being collected and reported is concise and accurate for your environment. I cannot stress enough the importance of getting the base policy correct. In our part 2 demonstration, I will create, modify and apply a vRealise policy to our example group, Wellington Horizon Servers, that we created in part 1. To recap, in part 1 we assigned the vSphere default policy to our example group. I will now create a new custom policy that will instruct vRealise to collect and report on information that I want to see. To create a new policy, click on the Administration tab and select Policies. On the right-hand side, click the tab named Policy Library and then click the green plus to create a new policy. We'll name this policy Horizon Server Policy and I'll copy the name into the description. I'll leave the starting policy to be the vSphere default policy. This will mean all settings I don't modify will be kept at the out-of-the-box level. I will now expand Section 3, Analysis Settings, of my new policy. To make changes to the settings applied to virtual machines, I'll select vCenter Adapter - Virtual Machine from the Show Changes For drop-down list. I'll then click the button Show Object Type to list all associated settings. With the policy settings in clear view, I will now modify some of these to make the information being collected and reported more concise. The first thing I need to decide on is what hours do I want vRealise collecting information about my Horizon servers. Do I only want this to be during work hours? Or do I want this to be the whole day minus my backup window? In its out-of-the-box state, vRealise will query vCenter every 20 seconds of every day. Therefore, the statistics pulled from my servers outside of business hours or during backup will likely skew their normal operational behavior. To change the time range upon which data is collected, I'll expand this section and will click the padlock to enable editing. In our custom policy, I only want information collected about our servers during business hours. I'll therefore check specific days and times and I'll remove the tick from Sunday and Saturday. I'm happy with the working day being 8 AM to 6 PM. If I prefer to select a maintenance schedule to prevent statistics being collected, I would firstly create one under the Administration tab. I can then select this from the Maintenance Schedule drop-down list. To provide an example, I've created a schedule named Backup Window that you can see here. Now I want to focus on stress. Stress is a way of identifying virtual machines that have been under-provisioned. Once again, I'll expand this section and will click on the padlock to enable editing. An object is considered stressed when the demand on its resources over time exceeds the value entered here. I've changed the stress starting value to be 60% of assigned CPU and memory. I want our virtual machines to be using a good portion of their assigned resource. vRealise will then report on the severity of stress based on the percentage of demand above this initial value. If a virtual machine's demand rises above 6%, then vRealise will colour the severity of the stress in line with how we've configured the stress score threshold. Changing the values here will instruct vRealise to colour stress as yellow, above 70% of demand, orange, above 80% of demand, and finally red, above 85% of demand. With under-provisioned virtual machines identified, I now want to focus on virtual machines that are over-provisioned or that may be surplus to requirements. These are virtual machines that have been assigned significantly more resource than they operationally require or are simply just not used or accessed. To modify the setting, I'll once again click the padlock to the right of reclaimable capacity and will expand the section. The first setting I will change is the flag is oversized when recommended size is less than current size. I will change this to 50% which is aligned with the idea that I want virtual machines to be using around 60% of their assigned resource. The last setting that I'll change is the number of days before a virtual machine is flagged as unused. I will change this to 92, which is approximately 3 months. I'll leave the rest of the settings at their base level. I will come back to capacity and time remating in the next episode. I now want to apply this newly created policy to the group of virtual machines created in Part 1. To do this, click the plus next to Section 8, Apply Policy to Groups. With this section expanded, I will now put a tick next to Wellington Horizon Servers and will click Save. I have now created and assigned our newly created custom policy. In our third and final installment of this mini-series, I'll finish creating our custom policy and will show you how the information reported by vRops correlates to vCenter. I will also provide you some tips to get the most out of the product. The link to Part 3 will be posted below in the description.